your foxy writer, Brandy Ackerley, bringing worlds of saturated color your way. Oh, it's been a great week! First, I got to see Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Oh, I want to do an entire episode on it! Oh, but for now, completely spoiler-free, I will say that this is the Marvel movie that I have been waiting for. And I didn't know until I saw it that I was waiting for one. Oh, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. The same can actually be said for Free Guy. Like, take only the best parts of your favorite isekai, add in a lot of GTA, and then make it into a reverse rom-com. It's brilliant! Brilliant! I will be picking up a copy of both of these movies as soon as they come out on video. Like, as soon as they come out. In addition to that, I got a huge compliment from one of my beta readers on the third book. She's still working her way through it, but she says that this book looks to be like the best in the series so far. In particular, the first few chapters has an interaction between Deckard and Himiko that she was burning to discuss. Oh, we didn't get a chance to do it during her visit, but oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. She is working a new job, but she said that she should have it back to me by the end of October. I can't wait to start getting more of the responses back so I can start working on it. Oh, I only have the one so far. The fact that they also thought it was wonderful and amazing has me so excited. I can't wait to bring it to you guys. Now, in last week's episode, Kazunaha went to see Jack Curlow, the man she rebounded with after her relationship with Deckard, to see if he would be interested in helping her to procure supplies for her trip out of town with Richard. He agreed to help for a price. After that, he sent her to Deckard's, wearing only an old set of his old dock clothes, to see if she could find a place to stay for the evening. And now, on with the show. Okay, just let me pull out the book here. Ready? There, perfect. Deckard kissed Tieni again, and she pushed against him, her hands searching his body. It was nice having her by his side in his room. They hadn't been dating long, but they had become comfortable. There was a knock at his front door, and he grimaced. This was the part she hated. "Sorry," he whispered, pulling away from her lips. He'd need clothes, pants at the very least. Fortunately, he always kept a set right by his bed. Tieni's shoulders dropped. "Do you have to?" "I'm a healer, Tieni. I need to be available, regardless of the hour." "But, Deckard, I turned down playing at the Koi for tonight. A ship landed earlier today. You know how much I could have made playing. They asked for me specifically. You can ignore it for a few minutes, surely." He lived in one of the 3 homes in Nidan set aside for healers. He had an individual well, a tub for heated water, thick stone walls, and even a solid wooden roof. Repairs were made by grateful people, food and new clothes left at his door. He even had a stipend from the mayor that he could use to buy herbs, new supplies like bandages, ointment bases, and oils. In return for all of that, he was essentially always on call. He didn't get time off, even when his girlfriend had taken time off specifically to spend with him. He couldn't leave someone outside hurting, no matter how much he wanted to stay with her. She just didn't like it. She reached out to him. He caught her fingers and kissed them. "Tieni, I'm sorry." It was his path, the same one his mother had been on. Sometimes he wished he could give it up, become something else. He stood. Whatever he wished for when being a healer was inconvenient for him, he wouldn't be getting it. The air was cold on his skin, and he grabbed the pants and threw them on. The stone floor was chilly, and he made a mental note to throw an extra log on for the night. It may have been spring, but the cold weather hadn't released its hold yet. He opened the door. Kazunaha smiled hopefully at him. His mood dropped along with the temperature as the cool breeze chilled the stone even more. She'd asked him to leave her alone. Despite his better judgment, he'd agreed. He'd even done more than he'd agreed to, talking to Himiko about it. It wasn't fair for her to show up at his house later that same day after he was already in bed. What do you want? I'm sorry to wake you up. Can I come in? She shivered. The shirt she was wearing was too thin for the weather, and the pants were hardly better, drawn up to her thighs in an attempt to make them wearable. Why was she wearing them? Kazunaha hated pants, and Himiko's adoption of the style was all it took to set her against it. The entire outfit was cheap, undyed dock clothes with somebody else's stains. He'd known her for half his life, and she'd never worn undyed cotton or owned something passed down by anyone, but perhaps her sister. Even her sleeping clothes had been dyed and embroidered, when she'd bothered with them at all. Get in here. Why are you wearing pants? She shivered and moved to his kitchen table. Deckard threw a new log into the oven and started a fire to warm her. Afterward, he hung up a pot of water. Tea would warm her better than just the oven, and wouldn't waste the log that way. Besides, she would do better if he wasn't looking at her. Kazunaha shivered again, and he felt an irrational spurt of anger. Thank you, Deckard. Tierney walked out of his bedroom, and her words died away. He flushed. Tierney was wearing one of his shirts and nothing else. Her legs seemed to have no end, and the shirt only barely covered her. She looked like a prowling cat. He liked it, but then, like most men, Deckard liked women in whatever they wore. And if it was the right woman and the right situation, then naked was always a plus. She strode up to him and wrapped a hand around his waist. Without looking at Kazunaha, she lightly kissed his lips. Who is it, Deckard? We may not have been asleep, but it isn't as though we weren't busy. It took effort not to roll his eyes. There was a battle going on in his kitchen, and it was being fought silently, with clothing instead of swords and shields. He understood why Tierney wouldn't like an old girlfriend coming around, but did she really have to be such a child about it? Kazunaha flushed and stood, pushing the table back a few inches in her haste. She crossed her arms in front of her and looked anywhere but at them. He wasn't sure if she'd lost, or if she was going to concede the battle without fighting. I should have realized that you would be here. I didn't think. Kazunaha glanced back at him. I should have. I'll leave. Yes, I'll go. Sorry. He sighed as she leapt away from the table toward the door. Time to change the rules. It was his kitchen. His house. He wasn't going to let anyone, even Tierney, get away with scaring one of his guests or clients. Kazunaha, sit down. My front door is always open, even if other doors may be closed. He looked at Tierney. How about you hop back into bed? I'll join you as soon as I can. Tierney's eyes flashed, and Kazunaha paused, her hand already on the doorknob. He raised his eyebrows at his girlfriend. He wasn't going to turn away someone in need, even if he and Kazunaha did have a difficult past. If she said anything else, Kazunaha would flee like a colt the first time it was saddled. He'd have to chase her down. The faster he helped her, the faster he'd be back in bed with Tierney. She rolled her eyes and kissed him again. There was an urgency to it, But when she pulled away from him, she was smiling. "I'll be waiting for you then," she said. He liked her saunter as she moved, and he turned back to Kazunaha as Tieni closed the door to his room. It isn't important, not important enough that I disturb." Kazunaha gestured to the bedroom and stared daggers at the front door. "I'll find somewhere else. It's fine." "Somewhere else?" She sighed and wouldn't meet his eyes. I can't go back home tonight, Deckard. Himiko was in a rage when she got home. We fought, and she threatened to not give me my majority. I just can't stay there anymore." "You came here?" He didn't think that Himiko would actually deny Kazunaha her majority. It was odd for Himiko to overreact, but then again it was with Kazunaha. Anything was possible when it concerned those two. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. Kazunaha had always been like a porcupine. If you could get past the quills, you'd see how cute she could be. If you irritated her, well, she wasn't shy about showing her displeasure. She wouldn't have anywhere else to go, and with that ship that came in earlier, the koi would be full. How long? He heard himself ask, as she finally returned to the table. Ever, maybe? She glanced up at him, but looked away before she even met his eyes. "What?" "No, I mean, not here forever, but, Deckard, I don't know if I can go back home again. Not to live permanently." Her hair fell around her face, framing it in darkness. He fought back an urge to push it behind her ear like he would have when they'd been dating. Instead, he stood and checked on the water. It was just starting to boil, so he grabbed 2 cups and brought them to the table with some tea leaves. He put one of the mugs in front of Kazunaha. "It isn't the green tea you like so much, but it's all I have tonight. Can you start at the beginning for me, please?" Kazunaha sighed, but obediently took a sip. His measure of Richard went up as she reiterated what her night had been so far. Still, it didn't answer the most pertinent question. "So, why can't you go back home?" "I'm an adult, Deckard. I need my own home, a place that's mine. She'll never respect me as long as I'm living off the family's wages on the family estate." He wanted to point out that they probably wouldn't get along any better with her out of the house, either. Himiko and Kazunaha got on like oil and water. What comforted one would be a deadly insult to the other. "Kazunaha, do you even know how to get a house?" She shook her head. "No." By the 7, she was frustrating. She probably hadn't thought any further than her adventure. "Most times, a person's parents will help to build their children's homes when they marry, if their home is too small for the entire family to live in." He didn't mention the abandoned houses. Monster attacks and the occasional bandit raid claimed victims. It was sickening to leave the houses standing so long, a grim reminder of loss and danger. But sometimes the spirits of the deceased had to be placated before they would go peacefully to their eternal rest. A difficult procedure, depending on what the spirits felt they left undone in their lives. Everyone remembered the interloper who tried hiding in one of the homes to avoid paying for a room at the inn. He'd gone mad and killed 6 people before they'd been able to capture him and soothe the spirits that had possessed him. "I can worry about that later, then. Right now, I just need a room for tonight. I'll be leaving the city tomorrow evening, most likely. Since you have company already, I'll go. I don't want to inconvenience you." "Thank you for the tea," she said, turning to the door again. "What about Richard?" Deckard said, biting on his tongue hard enough that it hurt. He didn't trust the man, didn't want him anywhere near Kazunaha. "He said if I was staying with him, I'd be sleeping in his bed." Then she flushed. I wasn't." Deckard cut her off, his voice level. I can't give you the healing room. I do have a cot, a pillow, and a blanket you can use for tonight. After that, we'll have to talk. Her relief made him want to tear his hair out. How did she end up in these situations? About 10 minutes later, Kazunaha was set for the night, and Deckard retired to his room. He looked at Tieni. She was in his bed, glaring daggers. She would have heard him moving the cot, even if she hadn't heard the conversation. He slid out of his pants and under the covers. Kazunaha will be staying here for a few days. She has nowhere else to go, he told her. He would have to talk to Himiko tomorrow if he couldn't convince Kazunaha to do so. It wasn't in his job description. He was a healer, not a priest. But she would want to know where her sister was staying. Deckard wasn't going to try to solve the family's problems, but he could do that much. You tell me if I should be worried? He gave her a small kiss. Tieni, it won't happen. Ever. She cheated on me. I don't ask for much, but monogamy is at the top of that list. Saying it brought its own bitterness. Kazunaha. The last time Kazunaha had stayed here, she'd been in this room. It felt wrong having her outside. Not that he wanted Kazunaha in his bed again, ever. He meant that. It didn't mean that it didn't still hurt. Tieni's expression softened as he slid over to her. Deckard kissed her again, and her hands started caressing him. Frustratingly, his thoughts went to Kazunaha again, just outside the door. His chest tightened. He may not have had feelings for Kazunaha, but he couldn't stop thinking of her immediate presence. With a disappointed sigh, he stopped her. I've never liked an audience. Tieni grumped and moved to the other side of the bed. So you're kicking me out while she's here? I should have just stayed to work at the Koi tonight. No, he said, fiercely grabbing her. You're always welcome. I just don't enjoy it. Please stay. I want you by my side tonight. The tension drained from her, and he pulled her close. He blew out the candle, and she slid into the crook of his arm. With Tieni lying warm and solid beside him, he stayed awake, listening to the sound of her breathing. Okay. Okay, let me just take the book down here. Perfect. Every once in a while in the writing process, during the rough draft stage, the writing will flow and everything will come together in a way that just fuels your story and helps you remember why you're doing all of this work. This chapter was one of those. In particular, the part about Kazunaha going to see her ex dressed in another man's clothes. That was the thing that drove this chapter for me. It was juicy conflict, rife with potential, and I loved everything about it. However, when I was editing, I went through and looked at this scene and I rewrote it at least twice. Why? Well, one of the rules is that you need to kill your darlings if they don't suit your book. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out whether to keep in the conceit that made me want to write the chapter so eagerly in the first place. Clearly, I decided that it wasn't the darling that needed to be cut. But the fact is that this book was exceptionally close to being published, with her going to his house still wearing the expensive dress. And while that brought with it its own conflicts, this version worked out so much better that I had to keep it as it was originally written. Sometimes you just have to trust that your brain does know what it's doing when you write. Honestly, that's probably a good lesson learned, period. I mean, sometimes we can't trust our brains. I mean, especially if you're dealing with mental health issues. I deal with depression, so I understand that completely. But there are times when that first decision your brain makes will be the best answer. Without you needing to double or triple check your logic just to be sure. That's a lesson I'm still obviously trying to learn. Anyways, that's going to be it for today. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please like and share the video. And if you want to make sure that you aren't missing any future updates, remember to subscribe and maybe hit that notification bell. And we have another 3 or 4 chapters to go before the next quarterly episode. So please remember, if you have any comments or questions, to put them in below or email them to me at inkedfoxpress@gmail.com. Okay? Thank you! And I can't wait to see you next time! Bye!